So let's start with the song.树林中爱色到西出望外的傍晚，骑的单车有他和他的对谈，女孩的白色衣衫，男孩爱看她穿。好多桥段，好多的浪漫，好多也心酸，好聚好散，好多天都看不完。刚才问了你一下，你也喜欢背吗？不然怎么一直牵我的手不放？你说你好想带我回去你的家乡，绿瓦红砖，柳絮和青苔，过去和现在都一个样。你说你也会这样，慢慢喜欢你，慢慢的亲密，慢慢的自己，慢慢的你走在一起，慢慢我想配合你，慢慢把我给你，慢慢喜欢你，慢慢的回忆，慢慢的陪你，慢慢的老去。因为慢慢是最要的原因。晚餐后的甜点酒店，你喜欢的吧？今晚就往去你床的右边睡吧。这次旅行我还想吃上次的沙滩，球鞋、手表、袜子和奖项都已经烫好放在礼上，早上等着你起床。慢慢喜欢你，慢慢的亲密，慢慢的自己，慢慢的你走在一起，慢慢我想配合你，慢慢把我给你，慢慢喜欢你，慢慢的回忆，慢慢的陪你，慢慢的老去。因为慢慢是最要的原因。慢慢喜欢你，慢慢的亲密，慢慢的自己，慢慢和你走在一起，慢慢我想配合你，慢慢把我给你，慢慢喜欢你，慢慢的回忆，陪着你慢慢的老去。因为慢慢是最要的原因。Okay. Hey everyone. Oh wait, the camera, camera is over here. I was looking at my laptop the whole time. So welcome to Singing Simply Live Hangout number 1. I'm super excited to have some of you all here. And so I've actually got quite a bit of a setup here. I've got the camera over here, I've got my laptop here, the piano, which I've just turned off. And if you guys, because obviously this is a live hangout, if you have any questions or if you want to just say hi, pop a comment into the chats. I've actually got a little tablet here, and that hopefully should pick up all your messages. So if I don't see any, maybe something has gone wrong, but send it over. There's probably going to be about a 15 second delay, right? And so I will, when I see the message, I'll reply to it as soon as possible. Just to kind of talk a little bit about why am I doing this kind of live session? And so to give you a bit of my reasoning. So I've always wanted to create more of a community around singing, and especially with some of you guys who are following me, I'd love to kind of interact with you more versus just me posting content, you guys absorbing. I wanted to create something a bit more personal, and so that's why I wanted to create this little live hangout where every week, just like what I did just now, I'll share some of the music that I do, and then we'll just talk about questions. Hey Lynn, I just saw your message, so it means it's working. Thanks, thank you for joining me. All right, so I kind of sidetracked a tiny bit. So this live session is really just a way for us to kind of hang out and just talk about music, right? Because I think that's what we all love doing, and I've always wanted to share some of the music that I do. And if you heard the song at the beginning, you might have realized that it wasn't in English. And I think this is something that I wanted to share more about myself, because personally, I grew up with a lot of Asian music. I had a lot of Asian influence in the music that I do. And in particular, it was a lot of Chinese pop, right? Because I know there's so much craze about Japanese pop, like Korean pop, like K-pop, all those amazing kind of singers. But I wanted to kind of share some of the music that I listened to growing up. And so that first song I sang today was from a lady called Karen Mock. And she is a famous singer in Hong Kong. And she does a lot of Mandarin songs. And the song is actually quite innocent because it really talks about how when you're in a relationship, as you kind of start dating and progressing, you gradually start falling in love and giving more of yourself to the other person. So I thought that was a really sweet song. It's dedicated to all the lovers out there. But it was a really sweet song to kind of start off with. And so that's probably going to be a bit of the structure on how these kind of live sessions will run, which is every other week or every other Wednesday, I will prepare a little song for you guys. If hopefully I don't get sick or anything because it's getting into winter, but I'll perform a little song for you, and then we'll open up the floor to some Q&A. So if you guys have any questions about singing, if you've just started singing and there's a little question you want to kind of pop in, just pop into the chat box. I've got a little tablet over here, as I mentioned before. And whether you're from Facebook or on YouTube, it should collate them all into one chat. So I should be able to see all of them. So if you have a question, don't be afraid and pop it in the chat box. For today, I wanted to do something slightly different because I wanted to kind of, I posted up a thing on my social media asking if you guys wanted me to do a little live on, say if you were starting off as a complete beginner, where would you start off from? And so I've actually kind of prepared a little bit. I wanted to share maybe 3 simple tips on getting started as a complete beginner. And so if you have any questions, we'll jump straight into that after this kind of little spiel of mine. And if I don't get to it, don't worry. You can always DM me on Instagram at singwithivan. You can maybe email me at singsimplywithme@gmail.com. I'll post that all in a second, and I'll answer them in the next live. So I've actually got quite a few questions that have come through already. And so I want to make sure that I answer all your questions. If I don't get to it today, I will get to it in the future. And so I wanted to share 3 simple tips on getting started as a complete beginner, because if I was to kind of put myself back in maybe quite a few years ago, right? I really wished I had known these tips, because if you go on YouTube, if you go online and you look for how to get started with singing, you get a lot of amazing advice in the form of maybe like like do these kind of scales, right? And I think that's cool and all. But I want to kind of take a step back because some of you guys are even before that, right? Which is you've just completely started. And so I wanted to share a couple of tips on that. So very, very first tip, I think when you're first starting off with singing, the most important thing you actually want to do is don't worry about the scales, don't worry about your mixed voice, don't worry about singing the high notes yet, right? Yet. Because I think what's probably going to be more important is, can you find a spot for you to practice? Because if you want to get better at singing, singing is something that is more of like a long-term game. You have to be in it, right? I've been going at this for some time. My coach has been going at it for some time. So you can't really just be coming in, expect to practice for a week and be like, yes, I'm done, happy days, right? But there's a big hurdle there because a lot of you out there probably are living potentially with your family. Maybe you're in an apartment and you don't want to be too loud, right, for your neighbors or like your family members. And so you have to find a spot for yourself to practice in. One of my personal favorites is if you have a family car, having a car to practice in has done so many wonders. I used to have practice sessions at 5:30 a.m. So I just wake up because I just want to make sure it was the first thing I had done, right? And you would not believe the amount of soundproofing you get in a car. And so if you have a family car, by far, please go and practice there. You get so much soundproofing. I even have a lot of students or clients that take lesson over in the car actually, because it's going to be very, very soundproof. And then you're also away from people who might hear you. And so that's a big number one. So make sure you practice, find a spot for yourself to practice in. The garage is also a really awesome place, right? Because it's usually a bit detached from the rest of your house or your apartment. Maybe it's in the basement. It's also a really, really nice place to practice. Finally, and this is actually what I've done as well, you can go to a park, because in a park, because there's so much space around you, that is somewhere you can actually easily practice, because there's so much space between you and the next person. No one's going to hear you. No one's really going to hear you. Lynn, love Chinese pop. Amazing. Thank you very much. I mean, like, Chinese pop is something I really grew up with, and I want to actually continue sharing. I've got tons of songs that I've learned that are Chinese. I promise you all, this is not going to be all about Chinese music. I will play some kind of English songs as well. But I wanted to start with a Chinese one for today. What music do you like, Lynn? Let me know. So that's tip number one, right? I think finding your own spot, because if you can't commit the time to practice because you don't have a place to practice, don't worry about any tips, right? It's like you have to put in the work to actually get better. And so that will be tip number one. So if you're just joining me live, everyone, what we're doing at the moment is we're doing a bit of a live hangout session, and we're just talking about music. And at the moment, I'm sharing some tips on how to get started as a complete beginner. And what I'll do at the end is I'll also open this to a Q&A session. So if you have any questions about singing, do not hesitate, pop them in the chat. I've got a little tablet here that's collating all the information at the moment. And so I will see them. There might be a bit of a delay, but once you send it over and I see it, I'll see if I can answer them. So cool. Tip number 2, actually, and this is very, very interesting for me, because when I first started getting into singing, I was very obsessed with doing exercises, because I don't know if any of you have done this, right? But there are a lot of singing programs out there, and they used to come in the form of like CDs, right? Like, so CDs which you just plug into your car, and you would have you would have all these bunch of exercises and scales. Like, for example, they might get you to hum, those kind of sounds, right? And like, I think they were really funny looking back onto it. But there'll be all these different exercises out there, and a lot of them actually have a really amazing intention behind them. So props to the guys who have created those courses. But the thing I want to caveat is, when you are first getting into singing, there are no magical exercises. And what I mean by that is,
there isn't a magic exercise that will transform your voice and make you sound amazing. And I know that's a bit of a bummer. But it is true. I think there are some really good exercises if done right, and if you know exactly how to do them, they will take your voice to the next level. But there's a little step you have to take before that, which is you need to figure out when you're first starting to sing, what exactly are you good at already? And what exactly do you need to work on? And all that, to be honest, could take is maybe just sitting down with a couple of songs and just singing through them and noticing what you like. Maybe you should probably record yourself, right? What you like and what you find troublesome. Like maybe it's the high notes, maybe it is the pitch, maybe you're not singing on the right pitches. What is it exactly that you need to work on? Because once you can figure that out, that's when you can go, okay, well, I'm struggling with some of my high notes. I'm struggling with maybe getting to my mixed voice. Don't worry if some of you guys haven't heard that term yet. Maybe if you're struggling with that, right, then you can go, okay, well, what exercises can I actually do to solve that problem, right? Because fixing the high notes might be very different to kind of improving a pitch. They can be very totally different things. And so I'm not a big fan of just throwing you a bunch of exercises and going, hey, just do this for the next couple of years and you'll get better, right? I think it can happen if you're very kind of self-aware, you're constantly kind of trying to get better. But I think there's also a benefit to going, okay, well, what exactly do I need to focus on, right? Just getting that clarity. And that, frankly, is where a lot of teachers can really help out, right? So if you haven't worked with a voice teacher, frankly, that's actually the process that a lot of voice teachers will do. They'll sit you down and they'll listen to your voice and they'll just analyze and observe, like, what is this singer doing, right? Maybe they are lacking a bit of support. Maybe not engaging the body correctly. Maybe they're opening their mouth too much, right? What exactly are they doing? And then from there, they can then create like a little game plan and go, hey, this is what we need to do. We want to kind of work with these exercises, then try get this into a song. That's the little process that a teacher does. They're almost like a little kind of vocal detective. That's what I call myself, vocal detective, not a voice teacher. But this is frankly how you get better. You're constantly investigating with your own voice, figuring out what is that next step? What am I struggling with? And what is that next step for your voice? And so there is no magical exercise. So I don't know if that's a tip or maybe it's a bit of like a downer, but there is no magical exercise. I would recommend just sit down with a song, see if you can figure out what exactly do you need to work on. And if you like once you figure that out, right, or if you maybe if you're struggling, right, find a voice teacher. Like, I think time is probably the most valuable resource you have, and so you want to make sure you're actually going and asking people, right? Because if you're amazing, comment from YouTube. Thanks for joining me. So what I'm struggling with is I feel like I'm pushing my voice out when singing instead of having my voice fall out, if you know what I mean. Cool. I would jump into that question at the very end once I kind of go through these tips, but very, very, very good question. Okay. So no magical exercise. Make sure you just sit down, figure out what you need to focus on. If you need help, go see a teacher. Time is just valuable. You'd much rather pay a bit of money, right? It does cost money to see a teacher, but see a teacher first, right? And they compress time. They just save you so much time. Imagine learning what you could in 1 year on your own in a matter of weeks. Like that's just the kind of progress you'll see with a voice teacher. Now, tip number 3. Now, I'm keeping all these very generic because I want to make sure that you guys don't interpret it in the wrong way. Because if I went very specific and said, oh, you guys need to do this specific exercise, what could happen a lot of the times is that you might I can give the same exercise to 2 different students, and they will go off and do that completely different things. One might do it really well, one might not do it. And so if you ever need like very specific feedback, reach out to me. You can DM me on Instagram at singwithivan. It's going to be a great way for me to just see what exactly is happening with your voice. We've got someone from Korea, I think, joining us. Hello, thanks for joining me. It's amazing to have you here. If you have any questions, pop them in the chat. So I've got a little tablet here that's collating all the all your comments and questions, and so I'll answer them at the end. So, all right, I need to get some tea. For anyone, right, who gets a bit phlegmy in the morning, so I get really phlegmy in the morning, and it's about 9:49 a.m. In Sydney. If you guys get phlegmy, throat coat. This is an amazing tea. It's got some licorice fruit, I believe, and what it does is just really kind of gets these guys going, which I really, really love. Tip number 3. Okay, so this is for those of you guys who really, really want to see progress. You really want to get better, and it kind of comes back to that idea at the beginning, which was you have to put in the work to get better, right? And I think that's like a massive cliche, right? You must be like, Ivan, obviously, but you do need to put in the work to get better. And like not to brag or anything, right? But I've actually, for the past 3 years, I believe, I've been able to practice 3 times a day. I've been able to practice 3 times a day. And so the reason why I do that, right, is because I don't want to do very long sessions, because I'm obviously teaching as well, but also because I think there's just so much magic in being consistent, being very consistent as a singer, right? Day in, day out, you come in, you put in your hours, and then you go do your thing, right? But I also understand that it's very tricky. It's very tricky to build in this, because what gets me up going to practice now isn't willpower. I don't have to force myself to practice anymore, but rather it's become a habit. And I think if you guys can master this, this is going to really change not only your singing, right, but your life as well. Because if you can learn to start stacking habits, it becomes a lot easier to pick up a new discipline. And what I mean by this is, say, ask yourself, like, well, what is one thing that you do every single day? Like, without a doubt, you're going to do it every single day. For me, it was waking up. I always wake up, right? I mean, you kind of have to go to sleep and then you wake up, right? And so what I did was, as soon as I wake up, right, within 30 minutes, I go and practice, right? After I've obviously brushed my teeth, because it's kind of gross to not have brushed your teeth. But after I've brushed my teeth, after I've done like the kind of usual thing, right, I'll go practice. No matter how phlegmy my voice is, no matter how tight I'm feeling or groggy I'm feeling that day, but I will make sure to go and practice. And this kind of just became this really nice kind of little stack of habits. Wake up, practice. Wake up, practice. Wake up, practice. And what I also used to do was also stack it on to after lunch. So after lunch, practice, lunch, practice, lunch, practice. So you guys get the idea. You want to choose something that you're doing every single day. Now, for some of my students, they would go and like before they shower, or maybe after they shower, because some people will shower like every single day. I do that myself. After you shower, you go and practice. So that's another way you can do it, right? So I would say maybe write down what is one thing you do every single day, right? And see if you can assign 15 to 20 minutes of practice right after that. Because at the end of the day, like I've worked with so many people around the world. I think the guys or the girls who make the most progress are the ones who are consistent, right? And the ones who aren't willing, who are willing to put in that kind of 15 to 20 minutes. That's all you need, 15 to 20 minutes every single day. Because I'd much rather you do that 15 to 20 minutes daily versus 5 hours on a Friday night. Because we all know that cramming works. It works, right? Cramming obviously works in terms of getting to the exam, right? But after the exam, guess what? Bam, you forget everything. And so that's just not the way the brain works, right? The brain works based off nice, consistent repetition, especially if you're trying to get better. So that is tip number 3. So tip number 3, make sure you start stacking on your practice time. So if you're struggling with practicing, you want to practice all the time, but you just find that, like, say end of the week, you're like, man, I put in like maybe like tops 15 minutes this week. Then what you need to do is see if you can stack it and tie it on with another thing, something you do every single day. So cool. Yes, Mary, really, really good point. So Mary has said, I think it's the same with learning any instrument. And what she means by that is, yes, it's completely possible to learn, like piano, right? Oh, so loud. So loud. Anyway, I was going to do like a cool demo there, but it was too loud. So learning a new instrument is very, very possible, especially if you're doing it on your own. You can jump on YouTube, you can go search how to sing, how to learn how to sing, all that kind of stuff, right? Which is amazing. I have had students who have made a lot of progress learning online. But the big caveat is there is no feedback loop. And so this was my biggest problem when I first started. There's so much content out there, amazing information, but you can do it wrong. Like you can easily do it wrong. I did it wrong for like 3-4 years. And so what actually happened was I ended up building tongue tension. And so the voice isn't really something you want to mess around with. And so yes, you can totally learn how to sing on your own, but you want to be careful. You don't want to be building on the wrong habits, which is going to cost you time, maybe even cost you your voice sometimes, right? Like if you've been shouting or like belting and really pushing your voice for numerous years, you can get some damage there. And so be careful, guys. Anyway, so that is the 3 tips, right? So number 1, like if you're just completely getting started with singing, number 1, find your spot. Gosh, find somewhere to practice, because this is all about consistency, right? If you can find a spot where you can safely practice, you can be a bit more loud if you're if you want, you're not afraid of people judging you, that's going to really create a nice practice environment. Now, second thing, there are no magic exercises. If anyone tells you there is a magic exercise, they probably have good intentions, but they probably are doing for the clickbait. So there are no magical exercises. What you need to do, and what I suggest, is figure out what you are good at and what you need to improve on, because no one starts from the same boat. Some guys are naturally better at range. Some people are better at kind of singing on pitch. Some people have like amazing style, but they have no range, right? So you want to figure out where you are, and if you need help with that, voice teachers, like just reach out to a voice teacher. You can DM me, anyone, right? It really doesn't matter. Choose a teacher that you vibe with. And number 3, stacking your habits, because you actually need to put in work to get better, which is a no-brainer. But a lot of people just kind of ignore that. You need to get better by practicing and putting in the work. And what I suggest, stack it to something that you're already doing, because we humans are creatures of habit. We already have some habits, whether they're good or bad, and you want to see if you can tie in your singing practice with one of those habits. All right. So let's tackle Q&A. So if you guys have any questions, I'm going to open up the floor. If you guys have a question about singing, let's try keep it to maybe actually, I don't know where I was going with that, but let's go through some Q&A. And so I did have some questions that were sent through previously, but what I might do, I'll go through some of the questions here okay. So there's a couple here. See if there's any commonalities. Well, let's tackle this first. So what I'm struggling with is I feel like I'm pushing my voice out when singing instead of having my voice fall out, if you know what I mean. And so any suggestions to help with that? Oh, really, really good question. So usually with push, right? Pushing happens when our voice is inefficient. And there's a lot of different things that can make it inefficient. So I'm going to give you more of an overview because I have to hear you specifically to figure out which one it is for you. But usually when I'm coaching people, right, one of the things I'm thinking about is, okay, so we've got 3 systems to the voice. We've got our breathing, which is the fuel. You've got your vocal folds, which is the engine, right? Because when you drive up air against the vocal folds, they create that into sound. And then you've got the resonance, right, which is your vocal tract, your throat, your mouth, the spaces there, that shapes the sound. And depending on how you utilize all of them, you can get a very efficient sound or something that's not efficient at all. And so when you feel that sensation of pushing, you have to ask yourself, what is it, which system is causing that? I tend to find that there is, usually for people who are pushing quite a fair bit, a lot of the times is because, number one, their energy or the support from their body is either too much or too little. Because when you're going too little and there's no effort from the body, there isn't enough pressure for the chord to close together nicely. And so what actually happens is when there's so much air coming through, your throat kind of clamps down, almost like maybe it's some kind of self protective mechanism, but it does clamp down a bit, especially when you're leaking out too much air. But the counter is also true, especially when you're like kind of tensing up, embracing, right? Like that can cause that to happen as well. In general, right, there's with singing and kind of applying the right energy, you only need a slight subtle flex. It's not the feeling of lifting like 100 kilograms. It doesn't need to be that intense. If anything, this is one thing I do get a lot of my students to try. So you can put your palms together, right? And then all you need to do is just press them together, just gently. And maybe some of you might be feeling this, right? But there's a subtle flex in the lower abs, maybe the side. And I think that's probably as much as you need. You don't need to flex a whole lot more, unless you're singing like maybe classical where you need like a lot of volume or intensity. But a lot of pop music, you probably don't need that much actually. So that's one way, right? You've also got the vocal folds, and the vocal folds. I find one of the things that's very important is ensuring. Oh, what is that? Am I getting a call? Sorry, everyone. I started hearing some buzzing, so I thought my phone was getting a call. So anyway, so I think the main thing with the vocal folds is you want to make sure that the air pressure is just right. And one of the coolest things I've discovered, and this is probably going to tackle the resonance as well, is affect, choosing the right affect, like a sob, like joy, fear, some kind of expression, and you've got to really express in your face and your body, and using the right kind of body language almost corrects all of these three systems. And so what I would suggest for you, just because I haven't heard your voice, play around with a sob. Ma, mama, mama, mama. Play with a bit of a sob, because what that can do is it engages your body, it stops you from blasting too much air against those vocal folds, and also the resonance also tunes itself a bit nicer, because no one goes, mom, mom, like no one does that, right? You go, mom, mom. So your mouth is in a really, really nice spot. And so, wow, that was a really long answer. So I think to kind of summarize it for you, I would play around with adding a little gesture. But if you need anything more specific, maybe DM me a clip, right? DM me a clip. I don't know how I can type this out, but DM me a clip on Instagram at Sing with Ivan. I think it should be in the description below, but Sing, SING with Ivan. So I can probably get into more detail with you as long as I know what we're dealing with. Oh, we've got some new people joining us. Hey, Victor, thank you very much for joining us. So Victor, what we're doing at the moment, we're doing a bit of a Q&A. And so if you have any questions about singing that you'd love to ask, pop it in the chat box below. So I've got a little tablet here that's collating all the comments. And so yeah, when you pop it in, there should be about a 15-second delay, but after that, I should see it. And so if you've got any questions, pop them in and I'll answer them as soon as possible. All right, from Mary. For me, it's hard not to control air flowing when what I want to do is use all the air and just put words on top of that airflow. Is this a problem caused from unnecessary tension? You feel like you have to use all the air and put the words on top of that. I have to qualify that. And what I mean that is I have to know what sound you're making. And so this is the biggest thing with these kind of chat, right? Is without me ever hearing the sound, all I can give is general advice. And so similar to what I was saying before, there are no magical exercises. You probably have to explore a tiny bit on your own, but there could potentially be, you might be over-engaging your body. This is just my gut intuition. You might be overusing the body down here, potentially, right? One of the things you can probably play around with, right, is using something like this. Which is a straw, right? I mean, this is just my fancy straw, but if you've got like a little drinking straw, what it can do is it can make your airflow, it can show you how much airflow you're using because of the sound. Because if I go, if I'm blowing very hard on it, obviously there's a lot of pressure behind that sound versus blowing against some resistance. I think that could be a great way to just even test out for yourself. Okay, can I actually make sounds with different levels of airflow? Because I would say you don't actually, one of the things you want to work towards, Mary, is be able to sing with various airflows. So I'm not sure if you heard the song at the beginning, but I wasn't using the same amount of airflow every single time. There might have been a bit more pressure on the higher notes, a bit less here, but you want to train yourself so you can be able to sing at different intensity levels, and that's going to correspond to different airflows. I hope that answers again. Man, I am giving these very long-winded answers here, but I would say see if you can play with a straw, maybe just make some sounds, but try and make it at different airflow levels, and then see what that feels like in terms of sensations in your body. And then from there, you can probably try translate that into some singing. So I hope that helps. Okay, efficiency. I like this. Yeah. Thank you. I mean, I don't always think about singing like that, which is system 1, system 2, system 3. But I find that when you're building new habits, it can be very helpful to go, let's take a step back. What's happening here? What's happening here? What's happening here? In general though, right, when you're singing, they obviously work together, and there's actually some effects that bounce back. So this will affect this, which will affect this, which will affect this, and then like it kind of goes all over, right? But it's a complex system. But we can break it down and do the best we can for each of the systems. All right, so I think we've tackled most of the questions here. I'm excited. I actually thought no one was going to show up to this live session, so I'm pretty happy with myself already. I had some questions. I asked some of you on Instagram to share some of your singing questions, and so let's go through them as well. And so question number 1 was off Instagram, and they asked, can anyone learn to sing well? And in parentheses, they said, well enough for people to appreciate. And I would say the biggest thing, and this is partly like why I've chosen the name Singing Simply, because I think anyone can learn to sing well as long as it's broken down well enough for them. Because a lot of times, right, when you're learning to sing, if you're like, man, I can't learn how to sing, right, it's because you're approaching singing as singing. This is big topic, right? Learning to sing encapsulates a lot of different things. But if I can break it down for you to the muscles, the coordinations, the little things behind it, right, the different systems, then it becomes a lot easier to digest. And then as we start building and stacking them, you start to build that. Similar to, like, for example, like say if you play like basketball. I don't know why I've thought about basketball, but basketball, right? Yes, you want to play a lot of games. You want to kind of get good at playing actual games, right? But there are tons of drills, right? Maybe like kind of dribbling between your legs, or maybe doing all these kind of left, right hand, right? Those kind of drills are there to build the right kind of muscular coordination and habits. And so exact same thing with singing, right? We do these drills, as long as you know why you're doing them, right? We do these drills to train certain sensations, certain habits here, so that when you go to singing, you have a new set of habits, right? And that's where singing is, right? Singing is just a bunch of habits and coordinations. If you train them right, you will sing better. So that big elephant in the room, can anyone learn to sing well? Yes. Though, I mean, the caveat is it does take effort. And like that's probably a big cliche as well. It's not something that just snaps overnight. I mean, for some people it can. Like I have worked with some weirdos, right? And they would just like over a session they'll just click into a really kind of nice sound. But I think for most of us it takes deliberate effort, and that's why consistency is so key. You have to be able to put in that 15 to 20 minutes every day, maybe for the next 3 years, maybe for the next 5 years. But as long as you're enjoying the process, you've got the right guidance, and you've got the right attitude, it's fun. I mean, that's what better way to live life than that? Okay, what are some good ways to sing loud, healthier, and some good exercises for improving your pitch? All right, so I would say to be able to sing louder doesn't always necessarily mean unhealthy, because if you have a very efficient system, right, a very efficient voice, similar to how like a car, right, if you've got a very efficient car, you can kind of get more power with less fuel. and actually, I hope that analogy makes sense. But essentially, right, if we tweak our breathing, if we tweak our sound making here, which is the vocal folds vibrating, and tune the resonance right, you can make some pretty nice sounds for you can make some pretty nice sounds with volume actually. And so one of the best ways, without hearing you again, I want to kind of refer you to maybe early in the video where we talked about having an affect, because an affect naturally coordinates a lot of this. Your resonance, your vocal fold closure, and your breathing mechanism, right? It coordinates a lot of them together. And so even just like adding a bit of a sob, mum, 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 that's a pretty loud sound. Like it's not necessarily mum, mum. It's not a quiet sound, right? But it doesn't feel hard because the affect is making me engage the right amount of pressure from the body. The chords are coming together nicely, and I'm not going to do anything weird with my mouth. So I would say at the moment, play around with adding an affect to your singing. And that might be actually the theme for today. I should just call this live affect. Affect. Marie, try that. Yes, I think, see if that helps you. Let me know. I remember you're doing, I heard you a couple of weeks ago. You're doing completely fine. Like there's so many good things you're doing. I think it's just a matter of just experimenting more with your voice. Good exercises for pitch improving. Oh, this is a good one because I think for me, the way I think, how can I answer this? I think singing on pitch, especially singing well on pitch, is actually two things. Number one, it's actually maybe three things actually, I just thought of it. Number one, you have to be able to hear the right pitch. Duh, of course, right? You have to be able to hear the right pitch. But what I think a lot of people struggle with is actually recreating the right pitch, which is you hear it and you're like, oh, I know what that sounds like, right? But then when you recreate it, it's almost like if I go, and like I'm completely off, right? And the reason why is because we haven't trained the vocal folds. Sometimes they need a bit of training, just like a bit of accuracy kind of training to sing the right pitch. Finally, the third one, and this is usually for those who are in songs or already singing in songs, right? One of the biggest things I encourage is if you are already able to sing some songs, but you're noticing once in a while the pitch will fall off here and there, you're not struggling necessarily with pitch. You might be struggling more with attention. And what I mean by that is in a song, right, there's like so many things going on. You've got your lyrics, you've got an instrumental, you've got the rhythm, all these different things that are happening. And what that can do is it forces you to think about all these different things, right? Because think about, like, the best way I can think about it is, say your computer. If you've got a pretty fast computer, if you're suddenly jamming it with like a million different applications, it will slow down. It will slow down. Some things won't work. Some things won't load. Same thing with your voice. If you're trying to process all these different things, right, it can be very difficult. And so what you want to do, and a little exercise you can do, is try to find one way to simplify or strip part of the song away. So maybe it is about, say if you're singing with a song, maybe slow it down. Or another way is maybe instead of the lyrics, just sing it on like a mum, because what that can do is it stops you thinking about the lyrics, right? The less things you think about, probably the better your pitch can get into, because you're all of a sudden you have the attention span to think about pitch. So that's a little exercise you can do for improving your pitch. In terms of training your ear to hear or to recreate the right pitch in terms of with your vocal folds, a lot of that is really just having the right feedback, like having someone there to go, that's it, that's not it, that's it, that's not it. Because what that does is trains a new kind of mental model in your head. And so that is probably something you want to work with a teacher. I don't know if you can totally probably do it with like a tuner or something, but it's just confusing when you do it by yourself. Like it can be a lot simpler when you find the right person. Okay, maybe two more questions, and then we'll jump on. So, how do you keep your throat open while singing? I find that after a few words, I close up. Interesting. That's a great question. Okay. So, there could be a lot of reasons, once again, because perceiving your throat to be opened, a lot of people perceive it differently, Because some people, and this is a little thing you guys can try, a lot of people perceive this to be an open throat. Imagine just pulling your tongue to the back of your throat and trying to almost like swallow an egg in the back of your throat. Kind of like you're gagging a tiny bit, right? A lot of people actually perceive that as an open throat. And like actually some teachers actually still teach that. But that's not an open throat, right? Because what you've done is you just jammed your tongue back against that kind of open space. And so that's not really an open throat. I don't think so. Because it doesn't feel comfortable. And if I go, I feel this kind of heavy tension around here. I think in general, when you're trying to keep your throat quote unquote open, it is about relaxing a lot of the tensions in your articulators, right? If your larynx isn't coming up, your jaw isn't too tight, your lips isn't too squeezed, your tongue isn't in the weird position, like too far back or too far front, that naturally opens up your throat. And there's also that element of getting your soft palate up, which is a whole nother can of worm in itself. But in general, I would say just for now, one of the things you want to experiment is trying to keep maybe your articulators a bit more chill. Just chill them out a bit. I mean, for example, like say your jaw. One of the big things is you don't have to articulate with your jaw that much, because if I'm going ma 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 ma, if I'm doing a lot of articulation there, right? You don't need that, right? If anything, try just keeping your jaw still. Ma 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 ma. My lips are moving, right? My jaw's moving a tiny bit, but I'm not going ma 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 ma. If you're doing that, right, that could be a reason why you're closing up the throat. So I would say, gosh, I have to summarize these answers. If one thing you want to play around with, try to keep your jaw stationary and let your tongue articulate. And one of the questions I keep asking myself recently is, how little can I articulate but still get the word clear, right? Because we don't want to sacrifice our diction, right? But I feel like we don't also have to over articulate, because that can cause some problems too. So how lazy can you be with your articulators but still be clear? And maybe that can give you some more freedom. Cool. All right. Oh, Nathan, my man, thanks for joining here. I'm glad you joined the live. I hope you've got some value here. We've been working for some time, but I hope this kind of helps you too. All right. Last question of the day, and then we are done. So, what can I do every day to improve my voice? Oof. What can I do every day to improve my voice? Which exercises in particular? So, I think to really kind of start this off, there are no magic exercises. Back to tip number 2, there are no magic exercises because if anyone tells you there is a magic exercises, they are probably using it for the clickbait. But I will still recommend some, because otherwise it would just be such an easy way out answer. I think there are some exercises that naturally do a lot of things really, really well. For example, semi-occlusions are really, really impressive because they do a lot of interesting things with the resonance, the vocal folds, and also the system, similar to like the gestures. The affect, choosing an affect to sing with. Semi-occlusions are really, really helpful. And for some of you who aren't really familiar with what a semi-occlusion is, fancy word for just like have some kind of partial closing along the vocal tract. So if you think about the vocal tract being the throat all the way to your lips, can we find some way to close it off partially? And one thing that a lot of people love is actually a straw, because if I go, it's actually partially closing off my throat, right? And like not in terms of tension, right? Not tension, but there's a narrowing somewhere along the vocal tract. And what that means is that air that's coming out all of a sudden has to go through this little smaller opening. And as a result, we're not letting all our air out. And that kind of healthy back pressure is good for us. And so if you're after a specific exercise, even just sliding around, just sliding around on a straw, kind of going through scales, maybe working through these kind of semi-occlusions. Puffy cheeks is a great one. Puffy cheeks is a great one as well. Hums are a great one too, right? And anything, because anything that can kind of get you to partially narrow part of your vocal track so the air doesn't come out as quickly, it is going to be quite beneficial. This is especially good for some of you out there who might feel like you're pushing too much or maybe pushing too little. These kind of semi-occlusions help you find that spot in the middle. And so, all right, this was the biggest rant I've done by far. So I'm going to wrap up here because I actually have to jump off to something very, very soon. But I hope this live was helpful for you out there. And hopefully this is something, and you know what, not hopefully, yes, this is something I'm going to be doing every second Wednesday. This is a way, this is a little medium that I wanted to create where we can just hang out and just talk about, gosh, it's like singing, just talk about singing, no pressure. If you guys have like something about your voice that you're struggling with, bring it to these kind of sessions, right? It'll be cool to see if I can help you. And so I'm going to end off here. And what I would suggest is I couldn't answer all the questions because just because of time, I couldn't answer all the questions, but I will answer them next time as well. And so if you guys have any questions about singing, if there's some things you're still stuck on, bring a DM me on Instagram at Sing with Ivan. So Sing with Ivan. I think there's a link if you're on YouTube down below that points to my my profile. But pop your questions there. Just send me a DM with a question, and I will include them in the batch for next Wednesday. Next Wednesday. And also, if you are on email, you don't do Instagram, you can email me, singingsimplywithme@gmail.com. You can email me there, and then I will add them to the list as well. So I hope you all enjoyed this live stream. This is something I'd love to do. I'd love to just come in, maybe play some little piano or like some kind of music for you guys, and then we'll dive straight into some singing topics. And if you guys have a suggestion of maybe a topic for next time, that would be really cool. Today's topic was really kind of focused on how do you get started as a complete beginner. But if you guys have any other topics, maybe we can talk specifically about something, send them to me on Instagram or email too. That'll be amazing. So Marie, thank you very, very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the stream. Thank you everyone else for being part of this. It was really fun, and I would definitely do this again. So apart from that, I will see you all next time. So let me